Okay, video 6. And again, we are still on page 4, which I find more and more ridiculous. But let us try and get back to that one. We have now got a greater understanding of the discernment between the holographic energy units and how the holographic teaching system works with the vibrational field or the heart field to show us how to purify the holographic units, that is to transform the energy units of the density reality we used to be part of. That is part of the beginning work when you want to get out of the enclosure of electromagnetic energies, which it wasn't to begin with, but that's what it has become later on due to when the hijackers took over. They removed the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension from a reality and pushed it into the artificial ones or outside our reach by creating the emotional field and the mental field, which was the dawn of the type of humans we know today that are created within the Holocene, as science tells us. So before that, we didn't have that. And no, we're not Neanderthals. That is another project that was seeded to over 150,000 years ago, alongside with some of the other projects of Lemuria that were from some of the other workstations, etc., etc. So just the whole kind of what's going on inside the enclosure is what science knows of. What's going on beyond the enclosure in the original LPF1 network and density 1 energies of a reality field is something science do not know of yet. So that's why we need to do the energy work to get our heart field up to vibrate in density energy so we can begin to work with the holographic energy units. And that comes with the ability to create light, to work with different forms of vibrations, not just frequencies, that's electromagnetic energy, but vibration that activates the holographic units to unfold their information systems. That's why when people say, oh yeah, I'm using turquoise light and that works for me, it only works if you kind of have your radiation energies. That kind of goes with the understanding of once you vibrate things up and you know what it actually is and you sense what it is via your heart field and your central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system that has been altered to sense what we call density energies, and there'll be more of this in the future. Then the mind field kicks in, decodes, sorry about that, decodes what is being observed, and then you can use the spectrum of light and the colors of the spectrum of light to clear out some of the frequency alterations in your brain, while you at the same time are working with the radiation energies and are evaporating whatever's in front of you. That's where when I say you do the purple, the golden, blue, golden, white, that's a sequence where you alter the frequency network in the brain to be able to work correctly with the radiation level of what you're perceiving. Does the radiation energies have a color? No, but your brain will sometimes interpret it that way because it's using its frequency network, frequency coloration to try and understand the level of information that you're working with. So you can say, okay, so what does it mean that it's purple? That's lunar. Okay, what does it mean it's blue? That's rhabdoid. What does it mean that it's golden? That's avian. What does it mean it's white? That's insectoid. So that's the sequence that you kind of just go with the colors and you kind of already coded, oh yeah, these are the different types of reversed genetics that needs to be cleared out in the brain frequency pattern, so that if there are insectoid energies, avian or energies or rhabdoid energies or lunar energies in your brain configuration, then you clear it with that sequence of colors, while you at the same time are then looking further and expand your perception field into, okay, what am I actually dealing with? So that you will learn if you see some type of insectoid and you'll say, well, that's the white. No, not necessarily, because it can, an ant can be red, it can be white, it can be yellow, it can be green, it can have many different configurations. And that goes with what we could call the 7 rays of light that goes with some of the old world order classifications, where your brain will see that they exist on that type of frequency or they are connected to your neural network via that frequency of color that you're perceiving. They are existing in the 4th dimension. So technically they don't have that type of color, but your brain will interpret it that way within the color spectrum. So this is another way to kind of say, when we go with the green coloration, I've seen some of the insects of Japan, for instance, they have this green configuration, and I've not nailed it completely yet, because that type of green color is something I'm still working with. I know it's connected to the 1-7 pillar. It's connected to some of the older types of genetics that some of the Japanese populations have. It's connected to a type of mammal insectoids, which are a foreign race I don't know of yet. So therefore, I'm seeing the color. My brain is interpreting it on that frequency spectrum, but I haven't got the true coding of it. And I have not encountered enough of these beings and gotten enough information from them where they have allowed a connected vibration, from where they have transferred that type of energy to me, so to speak, either by reconfiguring me in my dream, so to speak, or by having me imprinted or something, so I could work on that level and experience it firsthand. As I said, you kind of need to be in the vibration to understand what you're actually dealing with. You have to be it before you can understand it. It's not something you can look from the outside and then just kind of discern, or deduce that that's what it is, as we do it within the frequency reality, because we are detached from everything. But when you work with the original density energies, you are implicated with everything. You are interfaced with it. You are interconnected to it via either similar types of genetics or similar types of energies. And if you don't have that, then the alien races can give it to you or alter you for a short period of time, so you can work there, which they have been doing with me many, many, many times. Because the only way I can release some of these is if I am on the same vibrational level and have the same radiation code systems present in my energy system, so I can work directly with them. And for that moment of time, they become part of my energy field, and then I can release them, and then I must clear out the effects of it afterwards. But it kind of gives me a lot of information that I'm kind of saying, oh yeah, that's the plus side. To be honest, as I always said, I would rather be without. But that is why I know as much as I know, and why I have so much experience. So my information is not studied, schooled. It's not scholar information, formal education. It is per experience, training, hands deep into the mud, learning how to deal with whatever's there. So the radiation level is also very, very important, because not until the 5th cycle radiation capacity has re-entered into your neural network and is there literally activating the inner chakra, as we called it, but it's kind of a specific network in the brain that's connected to the frontal lobes and is connected to what we could call a higher frequency spectrum of the brain capacity, where you have the limbic system that kind of goes in the yellow, orange, frequencies, it is. And you have the instinctual level that kind of goes more in the white, sometimes into green. It's very ancient, it's very old, so that's kind of some of the frequency patterns, creating specific electrochemical processes. You will see when they're doing these kind of brain mappings, whether it's artificial coloration or it's actual coloration, that's the good question. But there are definitely different colors that lights up when you use different parts of the brain. And I know many of it is, of course, artificial coloring, as they're doing with planetary systems and solar systems, whatever they're detecting out there, because most of these imagery or images are detected through what we call a type of scanning. So they just come back gray and white, but they can see the different frequency spectrums in the oscillation patterns, or the Doppler effect, and these kind of things with the machineries. And then the human interpretation system needs the colors, because we are seeing everything within the visual color spectrum, right? That's how we discern energy. So that's how our brain is built up, but that's also how our brain is being controlled. So we need to go beyond that. And the radiation energies, once that kicks in, the brain really begins to unfold access points into the reality we're part of. You can say the heart field works on the timelines, the brain field works on the reality network itself. And that's the difference. Once you have these two things combined, then and learn how to purify it, you learn how to transform the holographic energy unit, so you stand on purified light code streams that will only give you the highest purity rate, and you have, by apply the principles, the use of the principles and rules of engagement, exemplified and work with the high standards so you know how to act around other beings, including other human beings. So that's the rules of engagement, put into moral and ethics and psychological understanding and empathy and all of these kind of features, all depending on if you're dealing with humans inside the enclosure or you're dealing with entities caught up as shells and ghosts and what have you, or you're dealing with actual organic life forms in the other realities. You know how to respond to this. That's part of the higher standards as well. And then the brain field kicks in and gives you the information system of how to deal with this. And that's the highest progression rate. And not until these things are functional inside of you will your upper template genetics begin to descend, because that's where you will begin the last reconfiguration of your energy system, the higher order energy system. You have learned to master the reality you're part of by keeping the highest purity rate. You are working on the correct timelines. If there are none, you create your own. You're creating the sphere around you. You have a holographic imprint of the reality you're part of. Your mind field works perceptional wise in these different levels of the reality, and you have the right approach to who you are, what's around you, all these kind of things, and you're working in a way that is as harmless as possible. But of course, if you are encountering a predator, you will become harmful because you are in a battle situation, so you will respond accordingly. Diplomatically, scientifically, etc., etc. So there you begin to get your original genetics back, because you are in so control of your energy system that when you begin to activate what is stored in your upper template, what is left there, because most of it has been, as we did not follow the new grand cycle activation processes in the 6, 12, 5, 11, 4, 10, most of us missed that one. And the 3, 9, most of you are still missing that one. So you will have left what's in the 2, 8, and that will, once that begin to descend, that type of genetics will be connected to the second cycle, because the different levels of our upper template were connected to the cycles that were hit by the timeline event. So this is not necessarily a good thing. So this is also where we need to have that radiation field intact, so that once we begin to have the genetics descending, we can see them. Not going to use these. They need to be eradicated. They need to be annihilated. There's nothing in them there. That's not who I am anymore. I can't use that one. No, that links me up to these timelines. No, that pulls in that type of alien technology, etc., etc. So once we begin working with what we've got left in our upper template that were supposed to be reconfigured by our now completely functional transformative energy system, if we don't know how to transform and transmute energies, we will be inflated by these either contaminated or infected type of genetics that are, of course, not completely infected or completely contaminated. Some of them have become, unfortunately, but they were supposed to have as percentage of infection or a percentage of contamination. That's what we did in the replication for the upper template. We took the most healthy consciousness units and replicated them and put them into the upper template so they could be repaired. So once that was done and descended into the transformative energy system and all was summed up in a greater orb, not just a vibrational orb, but also holding the radiation energies and the code systems and everything could be put back into the original organic vessel in stasis. And then that would repair the whole thing and it would activate and come back to life as it truly were. And then the original configuration could be pulled back in and really begin working within the Pillar Project again. So that was the idea. So the original genetics are in the original form in stasis, but the replicate is in the upper template inside this enclosure as part of the restoration program. And I know some of you that go far back, you're saying, this is not what you taught in 2014, or this is not part of the source of humanity. But I didn't know this level of details at the time. I was only seeing certain things because I had not worked my way through all of the gory details of what's going on in our reality. So this is also part of the expansion of our consciousness as more and more of original genetics descend, and we work with these and use the holographic teaching system to vibrate them up so we can, via our radiation field, eradicate or amplify what needs to be amplified and build back into our energy system. You're seeing this is what the different races are using against me, making me their functional releaser of what they are supposed to do. That's what they're using me for. So I won't really be able to do my own. I'm constantly doing their stuff. And those of you guys who are coming to me, the factions that are pushing you my way are doing the exact same thing. Many of you are doing the progression work. You've been pushed into the progression work because the faction wants me to recreate some of their genetics. So you're doing your progression work, but the levels that are controlling you are then getting access to me and are using me as a releaser for some of the things that they need to get released. And some of you, if it doesn't work, then you will lose interest in the progression work, or you will suddenly turn against me saying, yeah, Randy, she's not worth anything or whatever, or you will get infused with negative energy, which is kind of, push me away or something. That's because the factions, they're done. They have not gotten from you what they want, so they don't see any purpose in having you doing this anymore. So that's part of the game too. We are not in control of who we are. And you can again say, well, Randy, that's because they're manipulating you to believe that. So you can't really work with other people as they are. And you're completely correct. Of course I can't. And I have been trying to say these things to some of you. And when I do this, the majority will respond in an extremely negative way and then push me away because they don't want to hear that this might be part of their inner reality. And they might be led to believe that I am putting in false information that are making them less than they are, or in some other ways are preventing people from becoming what they are supposed to be. But I'm acting on the information I'm getting. And you can say, well, that's manipulated information, not getting the true information. You're not seeing the bright light I am. You're not seeing how skilled and full of capacity I am and all the great levels I have. I just need to figure out how to get there. So for those of you who have that belief, well, go there. Get there, do that. Do what you must do. Find your own ways. Nobody says that you have to follow my teachings. There are plenty of other ways. But I can say a signature for those who do have a high viability rate, that are so clever and are so skilled. They are far ahead in the game already. They get everything from within. And getting a shitload of information from within, a lot of visual content and a lot of visions, and are seeing a lot of aliens and seeing a lot of weird stuff and weird programs or underworld entities or what have you. Seeing is not being what we could call highly skilled in doing the work. That's just an activation. That could just as well be programs. 95% of what people are experiencing are programs. The same with what I'm seeing. Perhaps I'm just looking into your programs and not really seeing what is behind. But that's why if we do work together, we have to do it over an extremely long period of time where we figure out what's going on and work our way layer by layer by layer. And if you're not doing that with me, you'll need to learn to do that yourself. And I can say that's one thing I've been doing for my entire life. I already learned when I was a teen, 16 or 17, how to evaporate thought forms. It came natural to me. Yes, I had a little period of time in my 20s where I was focused on the base program settings, and then I got really what we call out of sync with everything that I was, and then I began working my way back into who and what I truly am by the wake-up call, see things as you truly are, and began studying a lot of material, which most people begin with. But all of that studying should lead to a discernment mechanism where you look at all of what you're studying and saying, this leads to nowhere. Then you begin to do the experimental part of it, the experiential part of the work, where you begin to work with what you get from within. And there you will also discover that your quote unquote understanding of what you get from within is just as contaminated, just as distorted, and just as influenced, and just as false as many of the outer teaching systems that you have relied on. It's just a different orientation. And once you have discovered that and seen things as they truly are, as in kind of free of all of these influences, then you begin to understand, okay, there are different dimensions of our reality where I need different skill sets and different ways of operating, different ways of clearing energy. And so we could say, well, the Buddhism originally were made for the third cycle configuration. The Hindu teachings, the chakra system were for the fourth cycle type of configuration. But the Egyptians did not have chakra systems. They were working in a different manner. So we can't say uniformly that it goes for all in the fourth cycle. But it can be used as such today. But it's not necessary to do so which you know from the basic energy work. You can work directly with the organs and the glands. You don't need the chakra system. You just need to know that you're working on the peripheral nervous system. And that goes up to the different parts of the brain. So you're working with different electrochemical structures. You can use the base program Sciences and then add in healing methodology to work with that one without going to the quantum healing features, because that's part of the artificial fifth cycle, trying to teach people code systems, probability, possibilities, and these kind of things, and using different symbols to do so, which is not the accurate way. You don't heal by using frequency patterns. You heal by using density patterns, but density patterns can be influenced and reconfigured and can be holographic overlay and can be alien technology. So that's part of what the true version of the progression work really is, that deep understanding. And that goes with the holographic teaching system as well, because it was interactive. And it did simulate possible scenarios according to the template and what we had constructed and what we had decided to achieve in the system we were part of. So this is how it originally were. So when we were entering into a system in the original world where we need to reconfigure ourselves, we would activate our holographic teaching system as the orb I was talking about. It would gather information and then we would take it back and integrate it into our energy system. And then we would it would blast into our own holographic teaching system, which would then holographically blast into our energy field. That is a miniature reality with our perception field, begin to understand the different codes of this reality, and then we would work accordingly, creating a specific type of code streams and the different types of what we call vibrational states in our heart field, altering our biocodes, rearranging the understanding of what we need to perceive in that reality via the radiation field, and then reconfigure ourselves to be functional. You could call it shape-shifting, and on a very advanced level, to the worlds that we were temporarily becoming part of. If we chose to become more permanent residents in that reality, we would then change our physical form entirely to be part of. We would become part of that reality. But as a visitor, it was enough to reconfigure our energy system. And that's why we can have the template and the higher order energy system connected to this physical form, because it was already part of the original progressive races to do so, because we were traveling around a lot and we were not always kind of saying, yeah, I want to remain here. You could call us travelers sojourning the different progressive realms where we would learn different stuff. And then when we were done, we would take out that orb of information, evaporate it and scatter it in all the code systems, and by that give away our passport to that system, so to speak, pull ourselves out, clear our timelines, and leave nothing behind, because we have got what we needed. We had reconfigured some of our original consciousness units to be able to work with specific energies. Then we will return to our own reality, where we would then reconfigure that knowledge so it was suitable for the world that we were part of. So that is technically what I am talking about here. So what we need, the takeaway from this one, you can read the text. It's from the whole philosophy book, and it still stands. I've just explained the exact same thing here, but in a very much more elaborate way. So what we also need to understand is that whatever future we did not find suitable for our continued progression, we would change our ways or recode our code sequences to fit the reality or the future we were part of in a better way. So put it that way. So if we are a part of a system and we are working in specific ways, and we are beginning to see on the code streams that leads to distortion, which will then create an unfortunate future, we would change our ways. We would reconfigure ourselves. We would adapt our energy system, use the principles in the correct manner, again, detecting the original purpose and function of the reality we are part of, because distortion only comes when you're using your consciousness units in a way that is unfitting for the world you're part of. That's also why our template genetics, they already had flaws due to the timeline event, but it has not helped that the different races have been using our higher order energy system in clones and replications and false timelines and what have you. That has led to a larger infection rate, a larger contamination rate, and what have you in the remaining genetics we have in the upper template. And that's also why when we had the different neuron cycle activation sequences, there was nothing to restore. It was just all being so messed up that once the sequence is activated, it was just registered by the original construction itself that is running these clearing up processes. The new grand cycle technology is inserted into the original construction and activated there so she can shut down and be pulled out. So as mother detected that the templates were of no use, she eradicated them. She cleared them. Of course, it took a little bit of a while to get her reconfigured to do that because she had been tampered with, so that she would restore these flawed genetics to keep them functional, which were some of the programs that the Dracos put in because they knew of this technology coming from the D10 and had been part of what we call the previous fall cycle before the fall of Atlantis. They go so far back. So this is some of the issues that we've been dealing with. Mother did not work correctly because if she did, this world would not have been allowed to exist for so long because the viability rate of it was already low 15,000 years ago. It should have been shut down back then, but the Dracos came in and infused with different types of technologies. Again, a bad decision in my opinion. So this is part of the awakening process as well, to realize that it's not about keeping whatever is dysfunctional alive. It's about transforming it. And if it can fly, then it can exist, continuous existence, but it must elevate, it must develop, it must progress. And if it can't do that, then it has no functionality. Then it is for this enclosure alone. And this enclosure alone, can it progress? Can it evolve? Can it change into density energies? And that's what we're going to figure out in the density 1 transition that will come as in the wake of the planetary activation cycle. Once the planetary activation cycle is done in the 2.8 pillar, and we cleared that one out, that's why we will see, can this enclosure continue to exist in the type of energies and constructions and programs that it's made of without the original density 1 mother program, augmented, highly advanced type of technology that belonged to the Pillar Project and the original progressive worlds, because that will be pulled out in the planetary activation cycle. And since humanity, when we go into the human activation cycle that will run from 2034 and onward, most have not reconnected to their higher upper or the upper template. Then the last thing that will be done in the libraries, because they will be left and what's left in stasis there, if people don't activate their higher order energy system, begins the transformative energy system reconfiguration and reconnect to whatever is in stasis, then that's the last thing of the Pillar Project that will collapse and cease to exist. And that's the libraries, that's the radiation fields that will work their way through first in the 1.7 pillar, then the vibrational fields, and then the bioorganic fields in humans in 2043. And if no one has reconnected to the library and their original bodies in stasis, there is a kind of implosion mechanism that will go off, and that whole storage unit will just blow apart, and that will be the last piece of what is left in this reality field of the Pillar Project. And then all of that is done and gone. And then all that's left is the original density 1 configuration that were here before the Pillar Project. And that's technically what the density 1 transition is about. That's where it will end. And that is where we can say, well, that's the LPF1 network, and it's highly damaged. And that's why the transhuman agenda has a good chance of coming in and taking over, unless humans really get themselves back on track and figure out how to work without the alien technologies that are or have been given to our society by these different grays that have just been waiting for that point in time where they can come in and take over, because humans have been using their technology to a large degree, right? And we have got hybrid kids that have their genetics. We have got a whole plethora of humans that have insectoid genetics and are connected to what we call the artificial fourth dimension that are under and will be more under control by these different transhuman factions. So people are already working that direction. We're seeing the sciences, we're seeing the nanotechnology, we're seeing the bio-nanotechnology, etc. Is being implemented. They are getting ready to do their thing inside this reality. And that's the future that most of us will encounter. And then as we leave and that is done, another type of human civilization will be seeded, and that will have absolutely nothing to do with the humans we know of today. Okay. So that's the future I don't want to be part of. So therefore, I'm changing my ways and I recode my code sequences to fit the original fifth cycle timelines in my heart field, which will take me away from the fourth cycle configuration. And by that, I will no longer create light as we know of it and that caring, empathic, Kalika code way, but will go into a more what we could call different type of light, let me just put it that way, that is more aligned with the radiation energies and thereby change the vibrational energies of my heart field to be more what we call radiation-like and less vibration-like. So they will not oscillate and go in concentric circles, so to speak, around in my system, but become more as a kind of an emission or a cone of light that has a different functionality, which goes with the fifth cycle. But that's that will be highly dependent on the type of consciousness units we have in our onboard template, how this reconfiguration as we're shifting between the cycles are unfolding. So there I can't say that goes for all. And that's just the beginning understanding of it. It will change accordingly as I learn to work with it. If you ask me in 9 years' time, I will know so much more and I'll give so much more details of what that actually meant. Okay, so we utilize our consciousness to do so with the reconfiguration, since we were the ones that had engineered our template and energy system when we entered that system. Thus, if our template did not work, it was our responsibility to fix it. Of course, we can say that has changed with the restoration program, with the whole transformative, but we were part of how we wanted to transform our genetics, because after the timeline event, we knew that we would not become who we were before the timeline event. But we did engineer our template and energy system before we put our original body in stasis. We did re-engineer it how we wanted it to work. We did put that code system in that was highly connected to our individual consciousness units and our individual purpose and function originally within the Pillar Project. So each and one of us have made our own restoration body and transformative energy system. There were given specific sciences and specific technologies and specific type of reality units from the Pleiadians and the Sirians to be part of the fourth cycle and the fifth cycle under the humanoid projects, which we were also working with at the time, because the progressive human configuration, many of us that had come from the progressive worlds, we had already changed our configuration to be more humanoid when we entered into the LPU, and some of us entered via the Sirian system and others entered via the Pleiadian system. So the original white Pleiadian elder strand and the original Sirian white strand were part of the progressive worlds, whereas the current Pleiadians and the current Sirians were the ones that were re-engineered or recreated as part of the workstations inside the LPU. So this is where it becomes complicated again. But you've heard me talk about the white strands. They are part of the original progressive worlds. And then you have heard the later types of strands that the Sirian has the sky blue configuration. The Pleiadian has a tendency to go into the golden configuration. And that gives away some of what we could call, they have a higher level of avian type of genetics, but the avian type are not winged. It is a different type of avian configuration that goes with the ability to create organic architecture. So it's not technically avian, but some of the Pleiadians did, as they regressed, became what we call some kind of fairy beings, if you like, to put it in that context. And the Sirians, they were not necessarily what we could call kind of Rhabdoid with the blue configuration, but they do have rhabdoid genetics. And some of these Syrian, especially the Syrian bees, they are the ones that have crystallized to try and keep that original configuration and have teamed up with some more unfortunate Orion constellations, so to put it that way. Not just Orion constellation, but the constellations of different races within the Orion group and the Orion conglomerate of races that are what we call the negative alien agenda. Okay, so again, nothing is simple, nothing is just as it is. But that's why when we work with transformative energy system, we need to transform it to its original functionality as part of the restoration program, to its highest potentials. So that means as we work through our minefield, we will discover a lot of very contaminated, distorted Syrian technology, the cube technology, right? We will also see it as we do clear out our emotional field. We're also seeing the cubes that are connected there that is Syrian technology, but it's adapted to the Pleiadian technology, and that will have a different type of coloration. That's typically the Syrian A's were adapted to more the Pleiadian technologies, whereas the Syrian B's were more adapted to what we call the rhabdoid types of technologies. Again, making this different distinction, where the Series C were more in transhuman agenda and ended up becoming transhuman races entirely. So some of the Greys are actually Syrians. They call themselves Greys or Syrians, and they have that ability to actually show themselves as quote-unquote light beings. And some of the ones that are working with the Sirius system thinks, oh, these are benevolent because they are looking like light beings, but the Arcturians can look like light beings as well. It's just a matter of an overlay, or they push themselves up in a higher density vibration, which our system will interpret as light. And if we don't have the radiation field connected and can see the code systems, because highly negative type of energy does not always have to be dark and black. That's only if it has third cycle configuration. If they learn to clear that one out and have created an artificial crystalline construction where they contain what's left of the original holographic units inside their form, they will look like light. But is that true light? Because it cannot progress and evolve and develop and follow the original cycle, so it's the false light. Okay? Discernment, and only noticeable and understandable once your radiation field is activated and work with the information you have got stored in your original genetic, because that's the only way where you truly will recognize what you're dealing with, because that's stored in your template genetics. So if our template did not work, it was our responsibility to fix it. So we are, even though we have relied on some kind of joint forces to create this type of technology that would match for all inside the restoration program of the humanoids and true humans, original true humans, but also slightly to the LPU, we were creating our own variations of this so that we would become who we truly were. The humanoids would become humanoids, and the true humans would regain their true humans potentials, although altered to fit the LPU. So consequently, we are the only ones knowing how our template works and how it's engineered in detail. That's important to understand, not only the true wells and the original, but also within the restoration program, also within the Pillar Project. Because the underlying coding in everything we are is something we have engineered. And we learned that in the first two pillars, both before the timeline event and after the timeline event. And the reason why you could say, well, the timeline event hit hardest in the first three pillars was because that's where you had all the newbies, the newcomers that had not yet learned to master their own template and energy system, and not yet learned to master the rules of engagement and how to be around other people and how energy influence each other and how that reality is supposed to work. And the 3-9 pillar, where we connect with the radiation field to the holographic system that we're part of. So you have 1-7 pillar individual, 2-8 pillar, the energy system itself with other people, the 3-9 pillar, the connection to the reality field itself. So 1-7 pillar code system, 2-8 pillar vibrational field, 3-9 pillar the radiation field. So that is kind of how these things were put in together. So in the 3-9 pillar, we learn to work with all levels of the reality via our radiation field. In the 2-8 pillar, we learn to work with vibrational field in all of its ways amongst other peers and groups within the different lineages, and how we were to work together as teams, and how we were to become inclusive and understanding and learn to work as groups where we would assist each other, to amplify each other, to progress to the highest potentiality via the highest standards. And 1-7 pillar, we learned all about coding, our bioforms, our emotional field, our mental field, which is not what it was called back then, but the biofield, the vibrational field, and the radiation field, and how to code all of that so that we would be able to go out in the 2-8 pillar and put that into implementation and see if it worked. And if not, we would go back and recode. And in the 3-9 pillar, we would do the radiation field. And if the code systems were not adaptable and what we did not achieve what we wanted to, we went back and recoded it, because we had learned all that in the 1-7 pillar. So we are sovereign in all that we are, and we do not need teachers to make us become whole again. But we need other life forms and surroundings to mirror to us what we are, so we can self-correct and self-adjust. And as things are now, humans that resonate with us on the same level of work, but also understanding that even though they do resonate, we are now in a system of enormous amount of trickery, enormous amount of counterforce, enormous amount of distortion, and that nothing really is as what it presents itself to be. We must be enormously observant of everything that we do. And for most, and that's why the good advice have always been to take long holds or longer periods of times where you are secluding yourself to really just work with who and what you are and your inner reality, so that whatever you hold will all that you will be working with for a while, instead of being around other people and going out there and have all sorts of things going on in your surroundings will then add to the amount of work you need to do. And once you've had that longer period of time on the inside, then you can go out on the outside and use principle 4, use reality to mirror back to you what you have achieved. And if that mirroring or what comes your way on all depending on what level it is, leads you into a crisis, that just means you've got more to work with. So the more you do the progression work, the more sure you can be that when you are in the base program and when you're around other people, you will generate more and more crises. Not that this is a good thing, but that's just because you become less and less aligned with the world that you're part of. If you're doing the progression work and you're just doing the vibrational thing, you can still keep that compassion configuration, the love and light configuration, and you will smooth everything out in that heart field vibration, which I can do sometimes with people that are in the love and light configuration or doing the light codes. They can do this whole, I want to learn, I want to do this, but they are not ready. So I just smooth them out with some good love and light vibrational energies, which they will respond to nicely, and it will assist them for a period of time to get them further into their progression work. But the true awakening is followed by disalignment, deconstruction, tremor, earthquakes, heartbreaks, mental, dissonance, cognitive breakdown, all sorts of crises. And some of these crises will be alien technology and counterforces and everything that's trying to hold you back. So again, the discernment is this a crisis because my energy system is breaking down, and by that are letting in new types of energies that amplifies everything that needs to be cleared out on that level? Or is it because I am under attack and it's counterforces that are trying to shut me down again so I get back into the base program? And many times when we really activate, they are doing that. So we give up and we just slide back into our previous level of things where we get into the comfort zone where things are in balance again. And then some remain there because, I can't do more crises. I can't do more hits. I can't do more attacks. I can't deal more with more alien technology. And I'm tired of people, quote unquote, attack me or being used to put in specific type of energies, or they respond to the level I've gone into what they have a prohibiting technology, then responds to me to protect their projects and their energy system as in kind of they own that human, so they don't want you to activate that human or get them back into a true understanding of what reality is. So that's sometimes, especially when I'm working with people, that I'm experiencing that again and again and again. The entities are creating electrochemical disturbances. And once that has been mastered, then the prohibiting technologies come in. And if that's not enough, then the factions, one of the representatives of the faction come in. And then it's not just as a kind of, you will probably not experience it, but it will come after a session, because there I have the imprint of the student or the one I've been talking to, and they will enter into my field and they will let me know unequivocally that I am not welcome. And all depending on how hostile they are and how negative they are. If they're really shitty because they're contaminated and infected and sustaining themselves from that human, then I will get for a short period of time being contaminated and infected, and I have to clear that out. So it's a dangerous piece of work when we really begin the progression work. There we really need to understand that we can't just go around in our normal human behavior. Yes, we need to be good humans and we need to be kind to each other and we need to have empathy and understanding. But we also need to be able to dress up in diplomatic mode, in scientific or science mode, or warrior mode, or healer mode, or whatever type of hat we have to put on to meet up with the requirements of the activation cycles and what needs to be cleared up, how it needs to be cleared up, what we are dealing with, and how we are reconstructing ourselves so that we will not be demolished by these encounters, but actually leave the battlefield with new knowledge, a greater strength, a higher purity rate, have lifted ourselves up to higher standards because we have dealt with the situation in a manner we can technically be okay with because we follow the principles and the rules of engagement. And we have transformed the energy, transmuted it via the laws of energy that goes with the radiation field so that we know we have done what we could for the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate. And that's all we can do in our encounters. And what that is what is coded into our original energy system. And we will know when we have done good, so to speak, according to our energy system, and when we have worked in the wrong way. Because if we have worked in the wrong way, we get more distortion and we tumble down the regression spiral. If we have done good, we will begin to climb up and reconnect to some of the old trialing programs that were put in as part of the original restoration program, which Bailey calls initiations, where you will meet different trialing holographic entities. But these can also be deception programs. So again, you will only know if you actively have learned to work with your original energy system configuration. It's not an easy path. There's a lot of deception. And if you read spiritual encounters from people that have been doing this work over the last 10,000 years, and we only have written accounts for the last 3,000 years, we have the Book of the Dead and all of these kind of things. There are many different entities. Some of them are in the underworld. Some of them are on the planes of existence that we are. Some of them part of nature and all these kind of things. Are they real entities? Are they shells? Are they genetic replicates? Are they holographic overlay? What we see when we do the meditation work, is it our own visions, or is it part of holographic teaching system? Is it subconscious material? Is it holographic inserts? Is it just the brain that drums something up similar as we dream? Are our dreams really our own? Or are we in a parallel universal matrix? Or are we put into artificial programs and artificial realities? You see where I'm going. This is a long, long process of learning where we need to learn to see and understand what we are effectively dealing with, and then effectively respond in a manner that is accurate and in balance with whatever we are encountering on whatever level that we are encountering it. Thank you.